myself, I warmly welcome you all to this evening's Gentle Warrior program. And with a lot of love and just so much of fondness that I welcome today Sharmeen. Sharmeen, I have known her since she was just a little girl, and today she's such a beautiful lady. And Sharmeen has been a caregiver for a large part of her life. And she's the daughter of one of the loveliest ladies that I knew, Zareen Patel, who has had a long journey with Parkinson's. And Sharmeen is here to share with us her journey as a caregiver with her mom, and also with all the other people's lives whom she touched and was a caregiver for as she goes along. Sharmeen, can you tell us something about yourself?
Thank you so much, Zahver, for those kind words. And thank you so much for having me and giving me this chance and this opportunity of sharing my story and my experiences, as a caregiver. I truly believe, Zahver, that there is this one world of unwell people, sick people, diseased people, and all the suffering that they go through. And there is this other world of caregivers and whatever their experience. So Caregiver Sathi basically shifts the focus and the spotlight on this other world of caregivers.
Right.
And that's quite fantastic, actually. So thank you so much, Zahver, for making me part of this. Thank you to Bhavna Isar for spearheading Caregiver Sathi. And thank you, Nabia, for putting all this together and being the backbone of Caregiver Sathi. So, I am Sharmina Parikh. I have been born and brought up in this pretty city stroke town of Jamshedpur. And I live here with my family. I've got two boys, 24, 23 and 20. And my parents were living here in Jamshedpur also for the longest time, for most of their life. Yeah.
Lovely, Sharmeen. Sharmeen, I gather that you must have been about 26, 27 years old and, a young bride carrying her first child, probably when you got the diagnosis about your beloved mom, Sharmeen. Can you tell us something about, that there must have been some subtle changes that you noticed that were taking place with mummy, which is what actually led you to the investigation and the diagnosis? Could you tell us a bit more about it?
Yeah, so this was when I was pregnant with my first child, and this was 23 years ago. And Zahver, everything was absolutely fine, and mummy was great. Everything was hunky-dory. My sister had come down from Singapore, and she was spending the vacation with us. And mummy used to go for an evening walk. So that particular day, she went for her walk. And when she came back, my sister tells her, Mom, you were walking and I observed that your one arm was swinging, the way it would swing, but the other one was stiff. So mummy was like, oh yeah, that's true. I do feel a little bit of stiffness here. So that was, I remember that day very clearly. That was the day we caught it actually. And in the next few days, she started telling us, that she had a little issues moving her hand and stiffness and a little bit of rigidity. And then we took her to the doctor, and he made her do a series of exercises and walking, and he observed her. And I think straight away he said that this is the early onset of Parkinsonism.
And she must have been what, in her late 40s or 50?
No, plus? She was about 54.
And she was a teacher. And
and
she was one of the most loved teachers in our school. I know that it was not while I was there. But I know that my nieces and, everybody whom teacher Zareen taught, they all really loved her. Not only was she so beautiful on the exterior, even within her, Sharmeen, she was such a lovely, warm and such a gentle person. Yes, so I think she just exuded beauty from all, all aspects of her being. So you got to know that, and it must have been difficult to hear this diagnosis for you, 3 children, and for your dad. And I gather that from my conversation with you, this went on for a few years till you noticed that somehow at some point there was a downward spiral that took place. And what were the challenges that you faced? What helped you to cope?
So, Zahver, the first couple of years, she was okay in the sense that she was independent, and gradually the disease started catching on. The doctors call this a designer's disease because every case is different from the other. Very often the doctors would tell us that they learn from their patients, like, okay, you get this, we didn't know. So every patient is different. So initially it started with her, I remember her telling me that I can't tie my hair, then she couldn't cook. And there came a point of time which was most heartbreaking. And I remember very clearly her saying these words that I don't know what it is to be normal anymore.
Yes. I understand, Sharmeen. Thank you for sharing that with us. And it must have been so hard for her not to be able to do things that we all take for, we take it for granted, to be able to put a button, to tie, to comb your hair.
Yeah. So it was. And she said that, and then she would also say, now I know why people say you battle with a disease. I exactly know. She used to say that. So when she would say these things, we would actually catch on what she's going through. So it was tough, Zahver, as you can imagine. To see your loved one suffer so much. It's terrible. What can I say?
Yeah, and Sharmeen, she had a surgery performed that helped in some manner. Could you tell us something about it?
Yes. So I think 6 years down the line, there came a point of time when her health deteriorated so much that the medicines that she was taking for Parkinson stopped working on her. And she had lost a lot of weight and she was really bad. And I think that's at that time onwards, she started becoming very dependent on, she needed somebody next to her all the time. She couldn't have been left alone. So when we went to Bombay, her doctors were all in Bombay, they recommended this surgery. So this is called the deep brain stimulation, the DBS surgery, where they basically implant electrodes here inside the brain, and they are connected with wires. And then there is a pacemaker here, not to be confused with the heart pacemaker, but a pacemaker in the upper chest. So that basically, the battery there sends impulses to the brain and helps with the motor movements of the patient. So this is the surgery that we went in for. It was a tough decision to make because after all, it was a brain surgery. But yeah, we went in for this surgery for her.
So it must have been, it would be classified, I guess, as a very, surgery with quite a few risks.
Yes, a surgery with risks. The doctor at the very onset had told us that this surgery will only arrest her symptoms. It will not cure her disease. The disease will naturally progress the way it has to. This will just give her better movements. And it did help. So I would definitely recommend this surgery to people that suffer Parkinson's. They say that even people with MS, multiple sclerosis, people with Huntington's, other diseases could go in for this. But my mother was extremely unlucky in that, like every surgery comes with its own risks, and especially surgeries like these where you have implants. So she got an infection, and she got this infection. And in fact, once when I was bathing her, I saw that her skin here had split and I could see the battery. So we rushed her to Bombay and he stitched it up. And then he said, okay, let's wait for a couple of months. It again, the infection recurred. So yeah, so there came a point where when the doctor decided that this is not going ahead, so they had to reverse the surgery and the entire circuit was removed.
So she fell back several steps literally when this was reversed.
Yes. So when this was reversed and everything was removed, her health plummeted like anything. And I think that was the beginning of the worst phase for her. Because by then, as we know, Parkinson's is also a muscle disorder. Most of her motor movements had stopped. Most of her faculties were all compromised. She had lost bladder control. Her throat muscles had stopped functioning, which means she couldn't eat or couldn't swallow. Yeah.
So, which is why that you had to take the option of feeding her through the peg, as you called it, right, Sharmeen?
Yes. That's when the doctor there told us that, because she can't swallow and there would always be the risk of aspiration, let's have the peg surgery. So yeah, there was a tube attached and we used to give her food, a liquidized food. Yeah.
So Yeah. So, and all along she was mainly in bed then? Or were you able to put her in a wheelchair and take her out into the garden or onto the balcony? Was that possible, Sharmeen?
Yeah, no, we used to take her down, but it was very difficult because by now this was like Zahver, the last 3 years or 4 years of her life.
Okay.
She was very bad. We would hardly take her, and she was suffering so much that she didn't even enjoy going out anymore, or even yeah, she was very bad. She was very
Mm.
bad, and she had there was too much pain. There was too much of everything.
And Sharmeen, she knew right through, right, that she was going through this. There was nothing that you had not disclosed to her.
Yeah,
She was aware of her.
absolutely, absolutely. She was aware, absolutely. In fact, I remember her telling me that, earlier on in her diagnosis that, I read up on Parkinson's and it says the last stage is always swallowing. And when she read that, she must have gotten the fright of her life, poor thing. And she said, I'm never going to look in for more information. It's sometimes ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for you, and it must have been so difficult. And I know personally how much, I know that your dad, really helped in her caregiving journey. And the fact that he was living with her, and that she was in the same town as you for a long time. And then she was in Bombay for a long time, where your older sibling is. That must have been easy in some ways, but both you and your siblings became distant caregivers at some point, Sharmeen. And how challenging was that for you?
Um, Zaver, firstly, this journey is not just mine. It's
Right.
also my brothers and my sisters. I mean, I would have been nothing without them today. The kind of support, the kind of love, and the kind of understanding that they've had through this, I mean, it's immense. So I remember so often just calling my brother and just venting. I would just need to vent sometimes, or calling my sister. And for if ever, and several times like this, it would happen that I would be very overwhelmed by the situation, and I would
Right.
know that I can't manage this alone. I would give them a call and they would be there the next day in Jamshedpur. So them being there was a huge support. And whenever we were in Bombay with mommy and daddy, and that which was very often, we had a lot of help even from our friends and our relatives there. My mother's sister in Bombay, my mother's sister-in-law from Sikandrabad would, fly down at the drop of a hat to nurse my mother. So I think family is not just important; family is everything. That
That's
is so
so
true.
beautiful.
Yeah,
And
it is.
also your own family who were back home, and
Yeah,
giving such a big part of you while you were away.
my I mean, how do I even begin to say how supportive my husband was, or how supportive his family was?
Yes, I'm
I
sure.
mean, I wouldn't have been able to do anything if it was not for my husband, who was so kind and so understanding,
Right.
and or my mother-in-law, who looked after my kids while I was away. And I was away for like long,
Big chunks of time.
sometimes at a time, big chunks of time, and very often. It was not like a one-off thing. And Zaver, maybe my story is a little different from others because it was for a long time, extended period of time. I mean,
Nearly
it's
22 years,
20,
I think.
yeah,
That's a
yeah. So
really long time.
yeah, it's a very long time.
Right.
So to be consistently supportive, really, I'm so grateful. Even my friends here, Zaver, if I would be traveling, I mean, they would continuously go and check on my parents. And there's this dear friend, I was not here once, and she traveled with my parents. They had to rush to Bombay. She traveled with them because I was not here. I mean, how can I ever forget all this? Yeah.
So yeah, so I think having a network of support is just so important for us as caregivers. And Sharmeen, like you and me, and being just the fact of being in Jamshedpur, and I think being part of the, such a beautiful township and community feeling that we have there, we've been very blessed. But
Extreme.
along this caregiver journey, caregiver Sati journey, I've come to realize that not everybody is as lucky as us. And there are lots of people who face all these turmoils themselves. And they don't know, they don't really have anyone to turn to. And that's why I think that this platform that Bhavna has started, it's just so amazing that, if only we could spread the word more, and anybody who was in need could just, I mean, literally just tap their phone and they could be led to us, and we could provide them with support. And over these 22 years, Sharmeen, as you said, it was a long journey. I'm sure you also faced other challenges, like your dad was getting older, your father-in-law was away, and I know that he was in poor health. He was such a dear friend of my father's, wasn't he? He loved him. And I know that he had to suddenly, he had a cardiac arrest, is that so, or a stroke, Sharmeen?
No, he had a stroke after his bypass.
He had a stroke after his bypass.
Stroke, yeah. So that was very sad, yeah. So yes, Zahver, the fact of the matter is that, my parents have a 15-year gap. So it's like when my mother was 60, my dad was already 75. Or when she was 70, he was 85. So somewhere down the thing, I do feel that, because my mother became the center of our universe, because she needed so much love and care, that maybe we overlooked a few things of our dad, could be. Not that he ever complained. He was very independent himself. So that was great. But I think that happens, that happens, and that's probably natural.
Right. But I think that with God's grace, he led a good life, a long life, and he didn't have any one particular, predominant illness.
No, he didn't. And he led a good life. He was extremely supportive of my mom. He was always so optimistic. So having him around was such a pleasure. It was
I can one of Jamshedpur's most gorgeous couples, weren't they, Sharmeen? They really were one of Jamshedpur's most beautiful. Sharmeen, while we were talking the other day, you mentioned something that really stayed in my heart. And I had asked you that, do you think that she's in pain? Did you ever know that she was in pain? And you said to me that often she told you, I don't feel normal anymore. Now, those words are really stayed with me, because maybe she couldn't express exactly what was going wrong with her. Maybe it was a multitude of things. And it must have been so difficult. What gave you the strength to go on from day after day, month after month, and year after year?
I really don't know what gave me the strength. I think it's just, Zahver, we all are very duty-bound children. I don't know, it's love. It's the love that you have for the parent, that you put that before everything else. I mean, I had growing children. My kids were they were babies when she fell sick. Babies mean what? Infants. But when you've got to do something, you've got to do it. I mean, it just pushes you, and let's say you get pushed.
Right.
It's you've got to do what you've got to do. Yeah, that's it. So it was very hard. I will not say no. It is very hard because in the beginning there's a lot of gusto, there's a lot of tempo, so you do everything, and it's all new, it's a shock, so you're dealing with it, you're learning. A couple of years down the line, fatigue sets in, right? And exhaustion, and sometimes with some people it didn't happen with me, but I'm sure there could be burnout. So and then along with this, in tandem, there is despair, there is sorrow. I mean, I think the most predominant emotion is sadness and sorrow when you see somebody suffering so much. So I think that is what pushes you. And then you always have a backup. You have your, I had my husband, I had my siblings, I had my relatives. So I had my children. I mean, that was it was so sweet. They would never, if I would be out for months, so they would manage. So yeah.
And did this take you on to some particular hobbies, or did you not hobby, but something that you used when you were really down? Was there something that you turned to? Did it give you some spiritual path, or did you, like, when I used to be very agitated, sometimes just to walk down to our school chapel and sit there, and or just go out for a walk, or I started knitting, for example. So as caregivers, I think we need to find something that kind of instantly releases some stress. So was that something that you also that it led you to, or it was just you didn't even have the time for that, maybe, Sharmina?
See, Zahver, I think caregivers attract caregivers. It is so true. And I think we live in a community of love and kindness. And I don't want to sound like Mother Teresa, but that is what our life becomes,
Yeah.
And I have found myself getting attracted to friends who are such,
Right.
and we feed off each other's energies, if I may say so.
How wonderful.
So that started happening. I mean, how two of us have always connected, and there is this
Yeah.
unsaid
Connection. You can lift up from anywhere. You can pick up from anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That happened. That
Yeah.
happened. And besides that, definitely meditation helped a lot. I find meditation helps me in everything. I turned to pranic healing that gave me a lot of answers, gave me a lot of succor. Yeah.
That's wonderful. And
I-
Sharmina, was she able to, was mummy able to do any such thing? What helped her to go on from day to day? Was it just the love that she received from all of you?
Just because there was not anything else that she could do really. So it was just having people around her, people, her loved ones around her, and just because she couldn't even talk, after a certain point of time. So yeah,
And I'm sure your children brought her a lot of joy.
Oh yeah, they would. I would visit her place, and she lived close by, and yeah, it was basically having people around. I would say that was the main thing.
Yeah.
And smiling faces, that is what is most important, to have smiling faces. And we would try and cheer her up, and so Zahver, I learned along the way that there is a difference between care and caregiving. So care is you provide the basics, the physical needs, that is
taken care of.
Yeah, caring is beyond that. Caring is, the emotional support, the sitting and amusing them, or chatting with them and keeping them in good spirits. It's that extra bit. It's the emotional support you give. That is what they require. Very often we are so busy, giving that other kind of care, providing and managing things, that we forget that this is as important, or it may be even more important. So it's very important to spend time with them, and if they are impatient, most of them would be, not that my mother was, but if they're impatient or if they are getting crabby, just to let it pass. I know it's difficult to say, because it can be very frustrating, but yeah.
But Sharmina, from what I gather from what you're sharing with me today, is it typical of Parkinson's, or was it just in your mother's case that her mind did not get affected, right? Her thoughts were clear right to the end.
Right to the end.
But is does the mind deteriorate with some Parkinson's patients? Would you know?
Yeah, so Zahver, what happens is with prolonged Parkinson's, and see, it's basically a geriatric disease. So later on in life, maybe when they're in their 80s, sometimes dementia sets in.
I see.
So then it's like a combination of Parkinson's and dementia. Then, of course, it affects the mind. But in Mummy's case, no, that was not the case at all. So she was mentally all aware. I remember the last few things that she actually spoke when she could speak. This was a couple of months before she passed away. I was sitting next to her and trying to cheer her up, and generally asking her questions and trying to jog her memory. And I said, Mom, tell me, which was your favorite book? Because she used to say that she loved Gone with the Wind, and she'd read it a number of times. So she didn't remember. I said, no, tell. She didn't remember. I said, Gone with the Wind. So she's like, So I said, now you tell me who's the author. You won't believe. Pat comes the reply, Margaret Mitchell.
How so she wonderful.
Knew it. Yeah. So her memory was fine. She knew everything. And that's the sad part, because, you know everything. Your mind is active, but you're just trapped. You're physically trapped with a body that doesn't move.
That's really very hard. So Sharmina, you could communicate to her and she could understand what you were saying.
Yes.
But what was the means in which she responded to you? Was it just like, but you understood what her responses were, or did she write? Could she write, or she could not write either?
No, not at all. She would, there were times when my sister and I, we would ask her to say yes and no by blinking.
Okay. So that was the way in which she communicated with you. I know that this is very, very hard for you, Sharmeen. I know that your mom was just the center of your universe, and all the three children that she's brought into this world along with your dad are just such beautiful human beings. And I'm sure she's so very proud of watching you all and how beautifully you are helping others even now. And I think that's the true spirit, Sharmeen, that despite having been an active caregiver for the last 22 years, and then with your daddy, and now I know that your mother-in-law also lives in the same house, and she also been such a special person in our lives. And I'm sure she goes through her own old age problems that come with old age. And just by saying that you can just sit and talk to them, I mean, what more can one do really, and make them feel loved and happy. And you continue to be this wonderful ambassador of spreading goodwill, and just look at that smile. So I think that's really amazing. Sharmeen, what special memories do you have? Any special memories of this caregiving journey? Something that she said or something that she did that really stayed with you guys? Or were there also some lighter moments, Sharmeen?
Yeah, the light moments were with the kids when they would tease her.
Okay.
And she would go like, yeah, they have teased her a lot. And she used to love greenery and gardening and flowers. So, when I could, I would take her out. I mean, when she was in the condition of being put on the wheelchair, then we would take her out. And she used to love that. And what I remember very clearly is Zahver, at one point of time, she'd gone through. So every day, she would go through 4 or 5 phases of acute pain. Acute pain, and she would have this lockjaw where her mouth would open and it wouldn't close for and she would be gasping, and it wouldn't close for like half an hour, 40 minutes, 1 hour. And it was not a pulmonary issue. It was not that she was gasping because she was gasping. We really don't know what it was because she could never explain it.
Right.
So she went through this for hours, several hours in a day. And one such evening, I remember when she went through this and it was all over, and then she was better, and she had tears streaming down her eyes, and I just held her hand and I asked her, I said, Mom, all this that you've gone through and everything that you're getting tortured by, you still believe in God? And she just looked at me and she said, I didn't say you believe. I said, do you still think there is God?
Right.
And she just held my hand and said, of course. And I think that for me is the biggest validation, and the biggest proof for me that yes, if she, having gone through all that.
Yeah. Isn't that something? So she kept her faith, and till she could, she prayed herself, I'm sure.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely.
And that's so wonderful that somebody who had, she could have questioned it, but she didn't. Absolutely. She just plodded on. And so, I mean, it's really been wonderful to hear this. Is there anything that you'd like to share, Sharmeen, with people whose dear ones are going through with Parkinson's? Sharmeen, I also wanted to ask you one thing before we come to one of our closing questions. Did you, I guess 22 years ago, there was not that much on the internet, right? I mean, that was the time even my Tanya was born. So where did you gather most of your information from on, that thirst of information when you got this diagnosis? Were your doctors supportive enough to share it with you? Or how did you really, or, along the way, did it help you to keep reading about it? Did you join any kind of support circles?
I did remember I did join a certain, I don't remember the name now, but it was a Parkinson's organization, and I used to get the newsletters every now and then. So yes, that information was important because you also come to know about breakthroughs and, breakthrough medicine.
Yes.
And what other people might be doing. Sometimes they would even talk about Ayurveda and homeopathy. And we tried all of those for Mummy, all of those. So
would you try it in conjunction with what she was already doing, or did you have to stop her allopathic treatment?
No, very much in conjunction. I don't know how much that helped. We'll never know such things because maybe it retarded the progress of the disease. I don't know. But for a long time, we were doing Ayurveda. We were also doing homeopathy. Yeah. So all that was on. So we did a lot. Yeah, I mean, everything that we could do.
Yeah, I know.
I remember we were in America once. I had taken Mummy and I went to America. This was very early on in her diagnosis, and we went to this place called Reno, which is which is near this place, Vegas. And there they say there is this, this doctor, and she cures Parkinson's, and you admit yourself there for so many weeks. And also I took her there, and we stayed there, I think, for 10, 12 days. And she was undergoing treatment. It was like an alternative treatment. So yeah,
Okay.
you do try everything.
Yeah. I'm sure you try your best completely. And any other happy memories that you want to share with your mother that you had particularly? Sharmina, were there any messages that she gave you besides the message of strength and love and resilience along the way? Did she?
Yeah, she always gave us this message, even later when she was very unwell, about being kind. And she always said that, out of all the upper quality, what do you call, the higher qualities that the human may have, kindness is the most important, because she, in the way she put it across, that if you're kind, then you're also compassionate. You will also sacrifice. You will also be generous, So stay kind more than anything else, always empathize with people. And that has stayed with me,
Yeah, I mean, that's such a really beautiful message, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, that from kindness stems everything, literally.
Yeah, if you're kind, you're also all those things.
Yeah. So, that's really beautiful.
Like there's that saying that if you have to choose between being kind and being right, be kind. Choose kind.
Yeah, always, I think.
Sometimes, yeah.
Though it sometimes I don't know, sometimes may not be absolutely the correct decision, but
yeah, I mean, in moderation.
Yeah, in moderation. Sharmina, it's been so wonderful to have you here with us. And thank you so much. And I really wish that we as Caregiver Sati could have held your hand in this journey.
I wish I knew about this.
Yeah, it's relatively new initiative, but I'm sure that, people like you coming in with and talking to us has added so much more value to us. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Zahver. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.